Hey folks, it's Venture Minis. I am a skirmish gamer at heart, but as a big fan of Total War Warhammer and the Gotrex and Felix books, I've always dreamed of making an Empire army for the classic Warhammer rank and flank tabletop. Now, with Old World on the horizon, I wanted to figure out just how cheap I could go to make a Warhammer Empire army. The secret sauce I've found out is something known as fillers, but I'm going to talk about what the historical inspiration for this Empire army was, and so that I can find the models for it. Once I've found the models, I'll show you what I put together, and there we can talk about just how cheap we can make this army. The first thing to figure out was what the inspirations for this army was. We're in the Empire, first and foremost, which is all about the pike and shot 1600s aesthetic. This means funny hats, poofy arms, and chest plates. However, my army is also from Surland, which is the backwater of the Empire. It's swampy, dark, superstitious, and old-timey, so I wanted to mix some real Dark Age type vibes in there as well. With that in mind, I went hunting. Since most of the old Warhammer Empire sculpts are either way too old from the 90s and do not look good with the handgunner models, or are pretty expensive and still look pretty good, like some of the old cavalry models, I knew that I could choose to go for the main blocks of humans as alternative models rather than the ones that are made by GW. So I looked on the historical side for the halberdiers and great swords, which are sort of the big main blocks that I'm probably going to be fielding. I went with the Warlords game Landsknecks, which can come with Zweihanders or halberds. Each same box of these has options for both. It's 24 bodies for $35, plastic monopose. It's really great. The art on these from Warlord Games is questionable, but the sprues themselves are actually really nice. The faces don't look as strange as the box art does. From there, I knew I needed some handgunners and some extra bits to mix up my force. I knew that I didn't want them to all be sort of cohesive to the boxes they came with. I wanted to ensure they had the sort of ragtag look that the Empire is known for. So I went with the Wargames Atlantic Conquistadors, and you might say, what, Conquistadors, aren't those Spanish? And you'd be right, but look at the sprues. They have the same fluffy arms, the pike and shot vibes. They even have the helmets and hats that often you see in the Empire. You just do have those sort of classic triangle helmets you see on Conquistadors, but you don't have to use those. They have the big fluffy hats with the sort of Landsknecht cap and the feathers and whatnot that you can put on all your guys and make them look quite Empire. Again, that's going to be 24 bodies for $35 for these as well. So really not too bad compared to the $60 or so for a single box of 10 minis. Additionally, for my Free Company Militia, I wanted something more rabbly with some great bits, and so I used the Frostgrave Pirates and Frostgrave Wizard sprues that I had sitting around from playing Frostgrave, and that is working great to create the rabble of the Free Company Militia again, mixing up the other sprues in. And a friend of mine had leftover bits from a GW Pistoliers sprue. The Pistoliers kit was great and has some really nice bits. It has the sort of multi-barrel repeater rifles and pistols that the Empire is known for, and so I wanted to make sure that I was including those and not just sort of the traditional muskets. Once you mix all these kits together, you're really going to have a quite good force, but the secret sauce to truly making the Empire look like the Empire is something known as fillers. Now, in rank and file games, you have these things called movement trays, right? So for all game purposes, the movement tray is really what you're worrying about. The models are pretty much just HP markers, and with that in mind, folks realized pretty quickly, and by quickly I mean back in the 90s, that you could use some incredible hobbying to make these movement trays more than just a bunch of bodies on a square thing. Back in the game, when it was using 20mm bases for individual soldiers, folks would use 40mm bases to represent a block of 4x4 guys, but you wouldn't put 4 bodies on that 4x4 block. Instead, you'd have a beautiful diorama of scenery, an ogre, a dwarf anvil, as some of the art you can see on the screen here shows. Additionally, you can put a little diorama of folks sitting around. Maybe there's some dead bodies that someone's tending to or trying to clamber over. And some of these fillers are just stunning. The best part is they're socially acceptable amongst even the most sort of GW-only modelers out there. It's baked into the DNA of the game, and folks usually have the front ranks as all individual models for ensuring that HP tracking and unit size is super easy. Having the front rank all be individuals allows your opponent to be able to read and say, okay, how's the size of the unit looking? Additionally, it makes it so that when you take the 4x4 block out, you can ensure that you have individual models to represent those individual wounds that the unit has lost. Knowing that my Surlanders would need sort of all the help they can get, they are the backcountry rabble, I figure they would be really great to have some fun hired ogres in their units. So I split a Wargames Atlantic Lanchneck ogre box with a buddy, and I have 4 ogres who are going to be acting as fillers for my units, which you can see here. So a handgunner, a halberd, a greatsword, and a rabble ogre, which I might put with my swordsmen or might put with the Free Company militia. Additionally, I picked up some fun bits from the D&D model line. These are sort of the pre-primed minis, but they don't just have characters, they also have a piece of terrain. So you have the well here and a signpost that I plan to make into fillers as well. With all this means I can make with just a few boxes about 1,000 points. The more signature boxes that will be coming, like cavalry, cannons, and war machines, I've saved for last, knowing that I really do like the GW versions of those, and that I can make those as great centerpieces. Having your big rabble as the most expensive part of your army doesn't really make sense. You can get the really nice models to be the ones that are your centerpieces. So let's have a look at how this all turned out here. So first things first, you can see I have my troops here in the front who are still in plastic. You have a halberdier there. I got some green stuff in there for different things. They have all the seals on them. You can see that with the great swords here as well. I know one thing that's huge in a lot of the Empire art that sort of puts them aside from the historical counterparts is how many seals and sort of things hanging off them that they do have. And also the feathers are particularly big, so I want to make sure that I have as many feathers on these guys as possible. Additionally, most of these guys are all kit bashed together from multiple kits. You can see with that halberdier there at the front, that one has arms from Frostgrave Pirates. It has a body from the Warlord Games Landsknecht. It's got a head from a different body. It's just all over the place. Additionally, you can see in the back there, I have the big well with the handgunner on top there and the little flag. That is going to be one of the fillers. That will represent a 4x4 square of handgunners and will fit in the back of the unit with the ogre. And so it really adds some nice elevation to the unit. And over on the right side, you can see some of the test models that I did. These are Warhammer Underworld models. They're sort of witch hunters. I plan to use them either as witch hunters or as a part of the Free Company militia. This test scheme is a mix of GW Imperial Fist contrast paint, the yellow, as well as an Army Painter Speed Paint green. I really like both these colors a whole lot. They work great over white, and then you can really highlight them beautifully with some colors. They don't end up reactivating or anything like that, so you can do some additional highlights as well. This makes this army so much faster to paint, at least I think it will be. It usually won't take too long, especially with the sort of undercoats and the contrast paint on top. In total, for less than $100, I have a big block of handgunners, Free Company militia, greatswords, halberdiers, and swordsmen. If Old World infantry will be priced like Horus Heresy, it could be $80 for just one block of 20. So with my purchases, I've saved up to $300. These savings aren't just for the Empire, though. Bretonia can totally use 28mm Knight models, like those that Perry Miniatures has. They have the Agincourt Knights, which look great not only for Bretonian cavalry, but they also have ranged and melee troops that could totally work for Bretonia. So you could really just make a full Bretonian force using only Perry models. Additionally, Vampire Counts have tons of zombie and skeleton models out on the market. Wargames Atlantic has a great skeleton box, and they'll also be coming out with some skeleton cavalry soon as well. Of course, 3D printing is an option, and Highland Miniatures' Sunland Empire has some great Empire sculpts. Highland Miniatures also has other Warhammer-themed armies as well within their range, but I particularly like their great cannon that they have for the Empire. It has a really fun fish on it. I want to make it clear that I'm not saying don't buy GW Miniatures. I frankly adore the concept art that they've released for the Empire here. I mean, just look at that guy. So if they end up releasing models that represent that art, rather than just releasing 23-year-old sculpts, I'm definitely going to be buying in some of those to mix and match with my current models. Additionally, the old Empire Militia kit is incredible and is maybe one of the greatest kits of all time. And if they get that re-released, well, that's another great addition to Kit Bash with the rest of the models that I mentioned earlier. The best part of all this is it gives you a super well-rounded fantasy model spread that you can use for things like Frostgrave, Kings of War, Mordheim, Warcry, and other games. As much as this is an old world army, I plan to use this for those games and also the Warhammer Army Project, which is a fan-made 9th edition to Warhammer Fantasy Battles. More than anything, this is just a big hobby project for me that I'm going to enjoy the process of. And with that, thank you so much for watching. You know what to do. There's all those things in the description that you can click on and go to places that have my miniatures, like the Instagram, and there's the Patreon. Huzzah! Let me know your feedback in the comments. And as always, I don't know, have a good life!